Imagine simple men living on the fringes of society, fishermen with calloused hands, their skin weathered by the scorching sun. Among them was Simon Peter, an impulsive and stubborn man who quickly accepted the call of Jesus, unaware that his destiny was about to change forever. Now picture Peter walking alongside Jesus on the dusty roads of Galilee. He witnesses miracles that defy human understanding. Jesus calming storms with a single word, multiplying loaves and fishes to feed thousands, and even raising the dead. But when the darkest moment arrives, Peter, in a moment of weakness, denies knowing Jesus 3 times. Feel the weight of that guilt, the shame. But Peter's story doesn't end there. After Christ's resurrection, Peter transforms. He preaches in the streets of Jerusalem with unshakable courage, defying the same authorities who crucified his master. He performs miracles and converts thousands with a single sermon. Yet, his journey of faith would lead him to Rome, where a cruel fate awaited. In a powerful scene, Peter, now an old man, faces his executioners. He is to be crucified, but he makes a shocking request. He asks to be crucified upside down, feeling unworthy to die in the same manner as his Lord. Picture that moment. The apostle, once weak, now dies with an unquenchable faith, transformed by the power of the gospel. While Peter faced his own martyrdom in Rome, his brother Andrew followed an equally extraordinary path. Andrew, the first called by Jesus, became a pioneer, spreading the message of Christ to distant lands like Greece. There, in Patras, he met his end, tied to an X-shaped cross. But Andrew, with a serene calm, greeted the cross from afar, saying, "Hail, O cross, so long desired, and now prepared for me." Think about that. He did not fear death. He embraced it as one final opportunity to glorify Christ. For days, tied to the cross, Andrew continued to preach to all who gathered, turning his suffering into a final powerful sermon of faith. Now, imagine John, the beloved disciple, the one who rested his head on Jesus' chest at the Last Supper. Unlike his fellow apostles, John did not face a violent death. Exiled to the rocky island of Patmos, he received apocalyptic visions that would shape Christianity for millennia. Picture an aged John, his eyes weakened, gazing beyond time as he dictated the book of Revelation. His long life stood in stark contrast to the martyrdom of the other apostles, but his impact was no less profound. He guided the early church with wisdom until his final days. Now visualize James, John's brother, the first apostle to be martyred. Jerusalem was in turmoil, the Christian church growing rapidly, and King Herod Agrippa I, eager to please the Jewish elites, decided to target James. He was sentenced to death and beheaded. James's blood flowed through the streets of Jerusalem, sending shockwaves through the fledgling Christian community. Imagine the fear, the tension, but also the renewed determination of the Christians, who, instead of silencing, grew stronger in their faith. Now imagine Philip, preaching in the distant lands of Phrygia, facing immense challenges. Known for his practical nature, Philip navigated the complexities of Greco-Roman culture, spreading the gospel in foreign lands. He was martyred in Hierapolis. Some traditions say he was crucified upside down. Others say he was stoned. What is clear is that, like his fellow apostles, Philip embraced his fate with courage, without hesitation to give his life for the faith. Then picture Bartholomew, whose fate was perhaps the most brutal of all. He traveled to Armenia, where he preached the gospel and was eventually captured by order of the local king. What followed was a martyrdom that defies our modern sensibilities. Bartholomew was flayed alive before being crucified upside down. Try to imagine the pain, the torment, yet he remained steadfast in his faith. For Bartholomew, suffering for Christ was not a burden, it was an honor. Meanwhile, Matthew, once despised as a tax collector, became one of the most important authors of the Bible, writing the gospel that bears his name. After years of preaching in Judea, Matthew was martyred, according to tradition, in Ethiopia. His journey from social outcast to faithful apostle reminds us of the transformative power of faith. And then there were Jude Thaddeus and Simon the Zealot. They ventured into the perilous lands of Persia, where they encountered fierce resistance. Together they formed an unbreakable duo, preaching with passion and courage. But in their growing influence caught the attention of local authorities, who sought to silence them in a cruel way. Both were sawn in half. Picture the brutality of that act, but also the powerful testimony of faith they left behind. Finally, imagine Matthias, the man chosen to replace Judas Iscariot. A faithful follower from the beginning, Matthias preached the gospel in Judea and Ethiopia. He faced intense persecution, eventually being stoned to death. But even as the stones struck him, he continued to praise God, never renouncing his faith. These men didn't just preach the message of Christ, they lived it to their very last breath. Their lives, filled with sacrifice, suffering, and courage, stand as powerful testimonies of an unshakable faith. Now think about this. Each of these apostles accepted the call, knowing the journey would be difficult, knowing it could cost them their lives. And still, they persevered. These stories echo through the centuries, challenging us to reflect on what we are willing to sacrifice for our faith. May we find inspiration in their lives and seek the same courage, the same commitment to live our own journeys with passion and dedication. The legacy of the apostles is not just in their deaths, but in their lives, in how they illuminated the world and continue to light our hearts to this very day.